Okay. Yeah, I think I'm glad I remembered that. So my name is Stefanie Olson, and I have the honor and privilege of knowing John and Cindy Halloran and getting to work with them at the Center for AAC and Autism as a LAMP educator, a LAMP trainer. And I'll be kind of guiding the conversation tonight, although I don't think it's going to need much guidance. We all met this morning briefly, and our lives would be so much easier if we had just hit record about a month ago when we met to fine tune this webinar, because you could just watch the conversation that we had then. And but we'll try to replicate for you tonight. So I'd like to introduce our guest. Leigh Nenni is with Monroe to Orleans BOCES, which if you're from anywhere other than New York, you have no idea what that means, but that's how they call their school districts up there, BOCES. And you can elaborate on because that's an acronym, which sounds very strange if you're not familiar with it. But Leigh has been there since 1984 and serves as, I'm reading this here, the assistive technology director for the service department there, and has a unique perspective on services as they are provided through her department. And that's what we're really going to dig into today. And then we have Emily Benza, who is and I hope I pronounced your last name right, Emily.
Did great.
Perfect. Emily is a consultant for PRC Saltillo and serves New York, and you may serve outside of New York State as well.
I do not. I am Syracuse on West. So
Okay.
All you Syracuse people joining are in our area.
So as a consultant for PRC Saltillo, Emily has a unique role to serve the clients in her district, in her region, and beyond helping them acquire a device. So she has a role to play in the story we're going to tell tonight. And our next guest is David Kay, who is also in the Northeast and a consultant with PRC Saltillo. Emily is a speech pathologist. David is an occupational therapist, and they are part of a very dynamic team there are 6 or 7 of you in the Northeast on your team there. Is that correct?
6, yep.
6 of you. And they are doing some wonderful things in the Northeast, building capacity for AAC services and getting devices in the hands of kids. And then, of course, John Halloran, who is the co-founder and co-creator of the Center for AAC and Autism and the language acquisition through motor planning approach to teaching AAC, as well as the LAMP Words for Life app. So tonight, we're going to dig into what makes Leigh's district unique. And even the title of the webinar, a roadmap to increased AAC and instructional success in the classroom. How did this happen in this district? So I want to invite Leigh, I'd just like to invite you to talk a little bit more about your role and how it's evolved over the years that you've been there.
Sure. I've been at BOCES, which is the Board of Cooperative Educational Services in the Rochester area for 40 years. As part of the assistive technology department, it was developed about 35 years ago when I stepped in. We deliver services for both AT and AAC. So as a cooperative, we are not just one school district. We cover 9 component school districts. And our services range from anything from assistive technology supports all the way through to access and post-secondary supports for kids as they age out of our service umbrella of K-21. So as an individual, I came in to the department through the speech department. Actually, I was hired right when I got out of college, and I had the unique experience of working in an early intervention program. And I had the great fortune of working with a group of people that really believed in sharing information and really working with the child at the center. So I kind of fell into understanding the role of the educator, understanding the role of the OT, the PT, the vision teacher, and how collectively we had to look at the student and the family in the middle and in the center of everything that we did in order to develop a program for a little person birth through 3 years of age. And how we could take those skills and then move those skills and supports and advocacy for that family to school age, to preschool, and then to school age. And with that, I had on my caseload lots of kids that were really complex kids. And so I also fell into trying to figure out how to provide access to communication for them. And so that's kind of how it all evolved and where it started. I had, like I think everybody, a few kids that really just hooked me. I realized that they had this untapped potential and great ability, and they were part of a family but didn't have a means to access anything in their family other than what their moms and dads understood that they were trying to communicate. So that kind of opened up my thoughts about how do we deliver services, which rolled into how do we make that more of an offering for this organization. And so that's kind of where it started, and how from a direct service provider, I started to pitch the idea with some colleagues that it would be great to have this as a department. And so that was the beginning of how we came to be today. And today we are a department that services more than the 9 component districts. We have 2 BOCES. So BOCES are regional. We cover 2 different regions. So we probably have, under the biggest of umbrellas, 20 plus school districts that we're covering to provide services for our special education students under the BOCES special programs, but also within the districts, and how we then collaborate with all of those school districts depends on really kind of the model that we've moved to, which is more of we provide services for all. You purchase time from us, and then everyone is considered based on this process that we've put in place for determining need.
And so how many students does that encompass serving?
So it's so hard, I know you had asked that question a while ago. It's really hard to wrap a number around students because it goes, our services are based on a dynamic need. So it's really more about the school district and the size and the amount of time that they want us to provide services. Although if you ask an administrator, they'll probably say that I give away a lot more time than I should. So I think what the smaller school districts, obviously, they have fewer students that we may cover in terms of both AT and AAC. But it can range depending on need, from a handful of students to many, many students. What we found over the years, though, is that when we look only at students, we're not really reaching what we need to reach, because it is that expert model that we've all heard about lots of over the last several years. That's obviously something that doesn't work, and it hasn't worked for us for probably 25 plus years. So we moved away from that model probably before it was in vogue, because we realized that, one, we couldn't keep up with the need if we didn't go back and look at the adults in the environment and how we're providing the instruction to the kids and how we're really capturing what every student needs. So the number part, Stefanie, is a really difficult one for me to give you.
And
If they need, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was saying, I just remember the first time I met you, the children, I want to thank you and your staff and the families for sharing those children with us. And when we did the trainings for you, the number of people was was amazing, but even more amazing was the diversity of the people in the room. It had parents, it had the aides, it had the teachers, and it always felt to me like you put a lot of energy on the people who were on the ground with the kids the most, which I think was a wise decision. Uh, I remember the first time I went there, I mainly worked with kids who were blind or visually impaired.
Yeah.
And then you set up the second training, and this time you sent me, I think it was like 10 children's videos, which is only with Cindy might know how many hours it takes me to actually watch a 30-minute video, because you have to start and play. And I'm going to show one of those videos you shared with us before the night's over. But the second time I came back, I got to travel and live watch the kids in action with your therapist, which is very stressful for the teams, to have you come in and observe. I don't know if you remember this, but there was a kid in there, and his teacher's name was Miss Kate. And anyway, his name was Miss Kate, and they had this whiteboard, the smart board, and the whole class was participating. And I heard him saying mistake, mistake, mistake. And I thought he was commenting about other kids making mistakes or something. Ended up being that he didn't have the word Miss Kate on his device, so he calls her Mistake instead, which was just genius. And I just remember the guy with the guy with him. My biggest memory is I couldn't tell who I remember I asked you. I said, Leigh, who was the speech therapist in there? Because I couldn't tell who was who. So, however, at your school you did the training that got it where the therapists all work together as a team so much that nobody can tell who's who. That seems to me to be one of your gifts as a leader, that you figured out a way to implement an approach that makes that happen. So if there's any way other people can figure out how you did that would be one really good step for learning how to get this implementation to work. So, all right,
John, that's really what's sorry, did I cut you off there, sir? That's really what struck me during that AAC summit that we did out in Rochester a few months ago, when I was watching, that's still the biggest, some of the most, speaking of, there's something that you're doing that's just drawing people in. That was the most people we've had at a summit so far. And I'm part of, like Stefanie said, a 6-person Northeast AAC team here, and I'm happy to see that the rest of my team is on the chat there as well. But we were all there, and the thing that struck me as I started watching the videos, because Leigh you did some of the presenting, but then you also, in particular, I'm remembering there was a speech pathologist and a teacher who were sharing what you all had been up to, and it was the part where they were talking about co-teaching. You have speech pathologists and teachers co-teaching in classrooms, and I couldn't tell who was who at all as they were going back and forth. And I don't know, I remember sitting in that room and thinking, this is not, I think, the experience of most clinicians, teachers, professionals, in a classroom when it comes to AAC. So I started putting myself in the shoes of that room was full mostly with speech pathologists, not exclusively, but mostly. And thinking about, okay, I work in a school district and my district doesn't look like this. So just, I don't know, I came into this webinar wondering, what sort of ideas might come out, what sort of questions might come up, so that to whatever extent what you guys are doing there can be replicated and make the implementation, the word that comes to mind is holistic. It just felt like everyone was on board. And I talked to so many speech pathologists and teachers and parents out in the schools where seems like the biggest challenge almost is one person really, they went to a LAMP training, and then they got more information and they learned how to do some stuff. And then it's like they're the one carrying the flag, and trying to rally folks around them and get things to follow through. And that was my observation, just sitting in that room.
Well, and Leigh, you sent some photos to me and I have them up, and I wonder if this would be a good time to describe what's happening, because it reflects what we were just talking about.
Absolutely. So I do think that the reason that we push to to have everyone present as equal in a classroom so that you really can't distinguish one person from the next. Goes really way back to, I guess, when I just introduced where I started from. So in early intervention, you couldn't tell who I was either compared to somebody else, because you came at it with an understanding that everybody has to have not necessarily an equal knowledge base, but an understanding of how one discipline affects another. And so when we really started looking at how we were moving our needle, I guess, to where we wanted it to be, and I will say that I'm never, and I don't think anyone in my department ever feels like we've achieved that end. But when we get closer, what we really have recognized is that you have to share the language in order to build language. You have to use language across the day in order to become autonomous as a communicator. You have to have a robust level of instruction in order to understand how school language and social language and how the expectations for both are similar and different. So I think what we really found was that when we started looking at therapists, we really, in the beginning, did put all of our eggs in the therapist basket. You know, you are the keeper of the language, you understand it, you know where you're going, but you have 30 minutes, or at the very most in New York State, you have 150 minutes in a week that you get to really affect change. And 150 minutes out of a 6-hour day, or 30 minutes out of a 6-hour day, isn't a whole lot of time. So we recognize that in order for our kids to move, in order for our teachers to understand what our therapists were saying about how to use language, we had to bring everybody back into the classroom so that the teacher is the person who is really the one that affects the most change in a student across the day. They may not be the person who writes for a justification. They may not be the person who always programs something, but they certainly are the person who is teaching the most and interfacing the most along with the paraprofessionals. So we decided that in order to make a shift happen, we had to put a lot of our energy and time into really building an environment. And an environment meant breaking down the barriers and the attitudes and the fears of all the people in the classroom, and teaching them beyond operation, teaching them to really understand how you use a device to demonstrate language and support language for learning, and support language for interacting and building relationships. So we spent many a year trying to put the underpinnings, the framework in place. And that really was about teaching the adults and presenting information to the kids in a manner that when the therapist wasn't there, the device still was. So I think it really came from that understanding of in a home, you don't just communicate with one person in your home. So why would you do that in a classroom?
So were you ever in a place where there was one person, I'm just going to say it's the speech pathologist, who's kind of directing traffic, saying, okay, this is the device that we're using, this is the language system that we're using, this is how we're going to implement it, and then the teacher and the other staff in the room are just sort of kind of trying to fit it in, and it's awkward and it's not really working, and then there's resistance back and forth, and then if you were there, how did you, like, what was a step or two that helped you get something that got you at least on the path to something that's more fluid?
Sure. So yeah, we definitely had situations, and we still do, when we interface with new school districts. It's not for lack of wanting to help kids. It's really understanding what we're all trying to talk about. So the first thing that we really do is bring the teacher and the therapist, actually the entire team, together to talk about the learner in general, not just the learner in terms of the communication system, but what is it that the learner does? Really looking at it through the lens of probably AT more than AAC, right? So really looking at that SET model, which I grew up in terms of AT, and understanding kind of through all the learning that I was given the great luxury of being provided here. Really looking at kind of what that meant, what the learner needed to do, and really helping the staff first understand that it isn't a bubble that you're in. So you can't keep it with one person. If the teacher's sitting there saying that the student can't read and write and can't participate, then we help them understand, well, the only way you're going to get that is through kind of talking through this device and understanding what it is that you're looking at to augment that communication system. So we really come in at to any sort of new environment, helping people. And I say we, I will always say we, which sounds kind of strange, but I do fully believe that it is a force. My department, we are one, so it is a we. We all run it the same way and think the same way. So in thinking about that, we do really kind of parse out what it is that the barrier is in terms of how that student interfaces with everybody and what our role is as an adult. So how do we move from what I do to what you do to becoming us, right? To become this partnership that we have. And that really is about what's missing for that student to get there. And then where we start comes back to, how do you feel comfortable, teacher? Do you understand what this means? So then you bring in those devices. So at the end of the day, David, it still is the therapist who really makes the determination about, obviously, the language system and what route we're taking. But before we ever get there, there's deep conversations with people about what it is that they feel kids need in a classroom. And I think the other piece of it is we go in with the belief that kids aren't showing you what they're capable of. So, and don't assume that they're capable of less, assume they're capable of more. Just because they don't have a means to communicate, or their bodies don't work the same way that you think that they should, doesn't mean that they aren't having all sorts of ideas and thoughts that have value. So we start there, and that really is the first thing that we do. And once we get everybody at a level where they understand, and I'm not good at slow pace, so I don't think any of us are. There's a level of urgency there to me that if somebody calls and considers, that means you've already decided that your toolkit is tapped out. So you've got to look at something else, and that's an okay thing.
Leigh, you said, but what I want to bring people to understand is you have that high expectation for the children, but you also have that same high expectation for all the caregivers and the teacher staff. And I think I remember I was intimidated when I met you, and I still am a little intimidated when I'm around you. But I think it's a good thing to have high expectations of people. Sometimes when people say to me, when I get to things I want to share for how we better maybe reach those people in the direct care of the children, one, if they would attend more trainings, and you got them there, and I hope other people get them to those trainings. But sometimes people will say things like, well, I pick on core word of the day because it means that the therapist decided what word you're going to teach. And if you're thinking one word a day, you're not going to have a language explosion. Someone focuses on one word a day. Right. But they'll tell me that, John, we're doing that not for the kid or for the speech therapist, but for the staff. But I just don't see that being your staff. You're setting those sort of low expectations that one word a day would be in it. It's fine to do. It's not a bad thing. But we have to have a tool, which I was going to show, a tool that's really catching on that a lot of school districts are having a lot of success with. Is called Word Finder. And if people haven't, just in case, Stefanie, can I share my screen just for 1 second and show that feature? Just people haven't seen it before. This is that shift from thinking that that the staff, it's too much for them, to saying no, they can learn, they can do it, they can do anything we show them to do, like anyone else can. So Stefanie, are you seeing my screen? I am with technology.
Not yet.
Wine, Coke, Coke, water, water, iPod, album,
Well,
album,
I got
milk,
now
juice,
it's talking
juice,
wine,
juice,
Coke,
juice,
Coke.
juice, pants, pants, shirt, sweater, shoe, shoe, stabbed, poisoning, drowning, awful, terrible, terrible, mistaking, attacking, accident, problem,
That's how
weapon,
many
there,
words I've said
no.
since I hit the last clear display. All right, so now do you see it, Stephanie? I believe you do.
Yeah.
So I was in Ohio recently working, and I had a group of
Yep.
about 100 or 115 people in the room. And I said to the room, how many of you have seen this feature called Word Finder? And almost every hand went up. It was an amazing moment for me. And I said, how? And then you could tell their love for it. I said, how's it going for you? And I think they would admit it's one of the most dramatic changes. So when you teach staff that, somebody said they taught the bus driver even how to do it. But when you teach staff that they can go to spell mode, they can hit Word Finder, they can spell any word that they see the kid wants to say, whenever they're wanting to say it. I can't see my screen all of a sudden. I got to shift things around, you know. But anyway, you can spell any word. So think about doing any word, spelling it when you see Jimmy wants to say it. Say search, and then the machine with the device with one click, you can say guide me, and it lights it up brighter than all the rest so that Jimmy can find the word eat. And the idea that how many words can be taught across environments for all the staff and caregivers versus a core word of the day. Not putting down core word of the day again or core word of the week, but it really needs to be as many words as Jimmy can possibly learn. But I think that expectation you had for your staff, that once you saw a feature like this, your expectation is there's nobody in their environment that can't figure this out. We can teach them how to do it. So I really think that's that mentality from your level down that says everyone can, when you find an exciting feature that can help generalize communication and language, we're going to teach the therapists, who will teach the teachers, will teach the aides, who will teach the children. So.
And can I ask you a question, Leigh, because we mentioned this, we talked about it in our conversation earlier. What is you have a unique approach to getting those bite-sized bits of training to everyone, because not every district is, you've had a lot of trainings in your district.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've done lots of LAMP trainings. What other trainings have you done?
Oh, we've done LAMP trainings. We've done trainings for UNC for the last 6 years. They've come and worked with us. We go back, we do webinar after webinar, whatever's available. We bring in Emily. We've had, you name it. I think in terms of the trainings, anything that's available, we're open to. You never stop learning about it, right? So the minute that I think any of us feel we have it in the bag, then we have to walk away.
So
because
training,
we don't.
Right. And you've talked about,
Right.
You have some pillars in place.
Yep, we do.
And training is one of those. But I want you to talk specifically what you mentioned too, because it's hard. You have a day-long training. How do you get the paraprofessionals there? How do you get the bus driver there?
Right.
So what is your unique approach?
We do keep those. We always offer those, but in this day and age, and especially with the shortages that we have and the staffing issues that we have and sub issues, we can't bring people out. And I think we found more than anything that those long trainings, while they're great for the professionals, they're really overwhelming for people who are on the ground trying to figure things out. So we look for slivers of time. Honestly, when we find something that if staff come in and they have an extra 15 minutes, we look for the 3 minutes and we dedicate as an adult away from kids what you have to do to operationally develop your competencies and your skills. If that also means that we offer and we have the greatest luxury, and I know not everyone does, but we run a lending loan library that is a pretty robust library. So we have tons of devices. Every classroom has modeling devices that are designed solely to be placed for the adults. So those adults get to take those devices back and forth home to school. When we don't have enough, what we do though is that we let those devices go to lunch with the adults. They go on breaks with the adults. We play games, we do speed chatting, we do fun things that make learning where the words are a more enjoyable experience away from kids. And then when we're in front of kids, I think what we've come to learn is that modeling, we always talk a lot about, there's no, you model without a whole lot of expectation, and you're just modeling. We really believe that, yeah, that's true. You immerse kids with language everywhere, but there is a purpose behind modeling. And so if you're not sure at that moment, how do we really develop different ways to bring kids in using the device that where you're at? So we help staff really understand you may not know where every word is, and that's okay. So go back and really look at some of those strategies, descriptive teaching, really look at how you're helping describe what it is that you're seeing. And if you can't, if you're going to lose an interaction because of it, then you're going to cut your losses for a moment until you go back. And when you have another 5 minutes away from kids, go back and find that language. Go back and really practice it. So I agree with you, John, in that words of the day don't get you very far. I think they have purposes in terms of literacy and writing and spelling, and they really kind of bring everyone to pay more attention to what we're doing. But it really comes back, Stefanie, to the slivers of time that we find. And every classroom has it in a different, arranged differently. So as an organization, we've given our paraprofessionals in their contract 15 minutes extra each day. And that's what we really have used to build up not just what they need to do to support the teacher, but what they need to do to support the kids.
So you
Great.
have contracts for paraprofessionals.
Yeah.
This is coming from the top down.
Yes.
It's embedded in their day to give them that that time. That's just
Yep.
brilliant.
And Leigh, it was just perfect because you brought up that short spurts of information where people can attend to it. So because we were preparing for writing for a few weeks on what this presentation was going to give people for giving them the steps of getting the staff to be able to be a little more like your staff you put together. So one of the ideas we've come up with is giving people the rationale behind the vocabulary in 3-minute bullets. So I'm going to show you what we've done, and you will see. So far, all we have is people saying it sounds like a good idea. If you don't mind, let me go there first. I have something else. I'm actually here, so I'm going to go to something first. Let's go to the thing we brought up first. So I agree with you 100%. I think staff and teams need it in shorter spurts so that you can't sit for an hour every day, and you can't go to every training. So here's the idea. What if we sent you a 3-minute video of how the vocabulary is organized? So what we did is I took, basically they're 3-minute videos, and here's an example. So there's 24 3-minute videos. So I'm just going to go to the second one and randomly hit see what it is. It's a 3-minute video teaching the reasons behind the symbols and why the words are where they are. So let's see if you can see this.
Might have to share your sound.
Okay, here we go. Start 3 minutes. 3 minutes of this understanding metaphors and associations. I better get going. We were talking about this up button, and when you touch it, it's the only thing that shows up. But do know that word up's gonna have a lot of stuff going because you look up to your family. So that's why mom is there. You look up to your mom. And you know when you drink something, get up in the morning, you drink Coke. Some people, cocaine was originally in Coke, and some people shoot up Coke. But anyway, I'm not going to do too much of that. Just a little bit. Not everybody is. You see what I'm going to do, but it's not. We understand that kids learn through the gesture or the motor movement comes first, that they don't have to categorically sort and they don't have to understand multi-meaning symbols. Mm-hmm. But what we actually think is that there's the potential that the staff is even going to benefit even more. So I'm going to do the drinks. Just imagine when I get to the drink button, I do the entire, I would get through about 2 or 3 buttons in a 3-minute session. So when you hit the drink button, some people don't know that the reason coffee is right here is because coffee beans are little, and you're only supposed to drink a little shot of that espresso in the morning or something. And when you hit drink, I already just gave you the Coke is because you get up in the morning, you had caffeine in it, and originally Coke had cocaine in it, and maybe more history than you want to know. I'll just do one more for fun. When you hit drink, The reason this bridge turns to wine is because this is the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco leading to Napa. But if you drink too much wine, you're gonna end up living underneath this bridge. So that drink plus wine, if you don't understand that, you can just learn through the motor plan that this button takes you to the page and this button equals wine. But if you do benefit from the association, which we think the staff and the therapists do, maybe we haven't done a good job of giving you 3-minute spurts of this genius of Bruce Baker's work. So this is what we did: is we put 24 3-minute videos together, going through each 2 or 3 words at a time, giving you the rationales. To get to the end, you have some, but in the 3-minute spurt. And what we're hoping is that we could get some teachers, and Stefanie and I's thinking is that we would get teachers and aides and stuff and parents, and we would send them a video a day. So each day you'd get a 3-minute video. Leigh, I think your staff would eat this sort of stuff up because it's in a manageable amount of material.
Yeah.
So that's what we put together for you contributing so much to the field and your staff helping out so much. We thought we'd give something back by creating some tools for them to use.
So I do think that's exciting. I know earlier you had mentioned it. I think as part of that, we always believe we have 2 sets of learners in front of us. We have the student and we have the adults, and the adults do get overwhelmed more than the students do. So any support that we provide, we do lots of myth busting. We do lots of kind of helping people understand that while it looks so overwhelming, when you really kind of pull it all and parse it apart, it's pretty logical how you get from point A to point B. So I'm super excited that we would be able to use that with staff. I think the more people understand that it's really just that it's a simple way to organize your thoughts. We're just as people who use verbal language, our brains are just wired so differently. You just got to kind of roll it back a little, slow down, and realize that you're not, at first you're interacting, then you're learning, and you can learn away from a student and still interact beautifully. So to me, that'd be great.
Perfect. I'm excited for you're the perfect team to beta test this for us. We send it to a team, and I know if you encourage it, they'll watch it, and it's a 3-minute spurt. And it would be great. So we'll try that with your help, stuff. I'll help figure it out. I want to bring up how touched I was by watching your therapist. We were so impressed. I don't know if you remember this, but 3 or 4 years ago, maybe more, we asked you if we could watch your therapist in sessions so we could test this. We were working on a treatment integrity checklist. Did you remember that? I don't know if you remember that.
Yes, I do. Yep.
So anyway, there's this treatment integrity checklist that we spent years developing. I mean, Janie New and I have spent who knows how many hours working on it. Every year it's our goal that we'll get this thing published somehow. Well, it's never going to happen. So anyway, I've given up on it, but it gets bigger and longer and harder. What happened to us is that when we watched your videos, I couldn't get the LAMP team to have an agreement on what we were seeing in the video, basically. So man, we didn't have any treatment integrity ourselves. We didn't know what to look for. So that means we didn't train to what ends up being the test is pages long. Well, nobody can pass a test that's pages long. So we have to get it down to the 5 key elements is what we're working on now. What is it? What are the 5 really? Some things are good to have, some things you don't have to have, but other things are critical. And if they're missing, you're probably not going to have success. So over the last 30 years, I kept seeing this, that there would be a certain therapist in some school district somewhere, maybe New York or someplace in Texas, that could have success with almost every kid she or he saw. Tomorrow night, when we're going to have Joseph Ahuna doing this from Speech with Joe, I've been working with Joe for a long time. It's like every kid he gets turns out to be a little savant, or in a savant, maybe only using 2 words, but that's a savant to me if they're using it in fun and and they're going to their 3rd word. It's where they're going. But anyway, and then other therapists can seem to have this ability to make a kid successful. So there had to be something different between those people more than the kids. So do you remember a therapist I really loved from your center called Nikki? So I have permission to show Nikki. So I'm stealing this show from you, Leigh. Tell me to be quiet, and I will. But Nikki shared with us videos that we could learn, and she deserves a lot of credit for it. That takes a lot of courage. Share videos and then let us look at them. I'm moving the best I can here, Steph, through the. You'd think that sooner or later I would learn technology, but I really don't ever get any better with it. It really just frustrates me. All right, so I believe this would be, let me see if I get the first one. All right, so what first thing I want you to know is she is so child-centered, and she finds a way to make this little guy named Charlie do so good. And he's going to go to get a popsicle. And she sabotages him a couple times, but not too many times. If she would have sabotaged him too many times, he would have growled and he got upset. But around 1 minute, they finally make it to the refrigerator. And when they get to the refrigerator, which I love again, that it's a refrigerator in a teacher's lounge, probably. It's not he's been going down the hallway, he's been messing around, and he takes his device off his head, or she helps him put it up there. I want you to notice there was no prompt. She knows to minimally prompt. I never see, she does prompt him. And there are, out of this 27 minutes I've been watching today, there's one time she prompts too much, but so one person will see that one over prompt and say she over prompts, but you have to guess that in 27 minutes, she prompted the right exact level. She set him up, but she didn't say a word. She just sat there real patiently. And then he makes this beautiful sentence. And if you've been to a LAMP training, you'd know we would say the I and the want and we're at the automatic level. The open is at the associative. He could find it, detect it, and the it was at the automatic level, which is important that he showed all three levels there really nice. As soon as he said it, he hits the speak display and then looks up at her. And then she knows the difference between aided language stimulation, aided language input, and prompting and modeling. So she talks to him through her device, and she's quite fluid, but she doesn't go so fast that he can't process the speed of her hand, which I think is important. See where she's holding the device. And she just said, okay, is all she said. She said, what? No, she's talking to him with her device. A model would have him saying what color next. That's not what she did. She communicated with him. She modeled talking on the talker, but she didn't have the expectation he would say that next. Mm-hmm. She has the expectation that he would answer what color. Now that little tap may look, there are people that we're all full of people who criticize in our field, but this slightest little tap's what I love about her. When she wanted to tell him color and she saw him slow down a little bit, right here, she doesn't touch it. She doesn't touch his clear display, but she tapped it. And that told him to go to the color, and he says pink. And then she cast back, I want pink. She expanded and cast back, but she didn't make him correct it and say, she didn't make him say it longer, I want pink. So I just think she's a jewel, and I could watch hours of her in therapy. I got to show one more part where she just really won me over. At about 7:59, he uses several times. I catch him trying to use a sign that he'd learned in the past. He signs the word red when he's looking at some candy in another video, but in here, he's going to say the word more with his hands. I don't know how well you can hear the video. She's the most perfect gentle sabotager. A gentle sabotage ends in a smile. A sabotage that's not natural ends in a growl, and you don't want growling. So you got to, anyway. Now watch his hands. Right here, see his hands? She acknowledged it. She saw the sign and said, you told me you want more. And that little thing, that's a principal component of LAMP, is that you respect all forms of communication equally. When she saw him sign more, she said, "I heard you say more." She casted it back. Well, anyway, Nikki is, I just want to thank you again, Leigh, for sharing all those kids with us for us to learn from. And I want to encourage other people to share their videos with us. We don't have to have permission to show them like you granted. You can just have us watch them to get back with you and contact you and say, "Hey, here's what I think you might want to consider doing," or something.
Hey, John, I'm just watching. I'm sorry. Can I pause you for just a second?
Oh, of course.
If you were going on to something else, I'm just, so I'm sitting here kind of observing, I imagine like everyone else in the webinar, observing you providing feedback on Nikki to Leigh, who works with Leigh. And what I'm thinking is Leigh is sitting here receiving this feedback about her. And if there was,
well, she received it years ago.
Right.
I found Nikki to be I'm not saying I was infatuated with watching her in therapy, but she's a gifted therapist in my opinion. So
Yeah, right. So I guess my point is I'm just thinking about all the particularly the schools that I've been interacting with, in New York and a bit of Massachusetts and Vermont and such. And it seems like, and I could be completely making this up, but just what I've just been observing is a lot of folks kind of pulling things and I'm sure there's a financial aspect to it and whatnot, but basically just kind of pulling things in-house, like not necessarily contracting out to have services provided and such, and doing things internally. And so one of the things, I know that clearly you've had LAMP trainings with John in the past. And I just wonder, the extent to which, I don't know if you can speak to that a little bit, about just the extent to which you've actually, I know that you know so much of what you're doing now, but the extent to which you've reached out to have others come in and provide training, provide feedback, and how that kind of worked with UNC, how you got the folks in your organization to contract with them, to reach out and bring them in and kind of help things move in the direction you wanted them to.
Sure. So we have had, I can't even tell you the number of LAMP trainings we've had. John's been here 2 times. Stefanie, you've been here. There's several people who have been here over the years. We always reach out. So I think the first step is, for us anyways, we seek out information outside of our bubble, knowing that, you never know enough information. So we're always searching for more. So anything that's available, Emily would send it to me, or Darlette from the past would send it to me. If we have professional development opportunities and we learn that someone else is doing something and they're willing, we bring the information back. I then go to administration. I think over the years, I have realized that without the support of a really strong administrative group, and because we're a cooperative, that means 9 school districts, that we have to really align our ideals and our beliefs about what we think we should offer kids. The minute that we do that, and we gather those administrative, the understanding from the administrators, then I have a kind of an open door to reach out to everybody else, to ask what that looks like. What can you bring to us? How can we kind of financial, and it is a financial, school districts are under financial, constraints. So what is it that we can do that you can help us with and that we can provide to other therapists? And then I open the net for everybody. So I first start with administrators understanding that, we have these vendors who are able to do X, Y, and Z, or professionals who are willing to come in for this amount of money. If we open it up, can we really bring as many people as we possibly can in to learn about it? If we can, then we host it. And that's how the summit came, right? So that we know that the more that we can offer to the therapists around us and the professionals around us, the more likely kids will be successful when they move in and out of districts. And, people live within this community area. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to stay in that school district, but it may very well mean that they're going to live in this area. So rather than starting fresh every time, we open up our net to everybody. So I do reach out to every place that we see, or any person within my department. If they happen to learn from someone, they will seek out that person at a conference, or they'll reach out and ask if they're willing to share their knowledge with us. That's the only way that we build our knowledge base. And then we bring in internally, we make sure that we bring in the OTs, the PTs, the vision, music, so that they participate as well, with a level of learning and understanding that kind of reaches more people. So that's how we've done it. But the PRC has been in our area for many, many, many years. Darlette was with me well before Emily came to the area, so she helped bring things. I had the great fortune of going to Ohio years ago to learn. Went to Pittsburgh. So I think the more information that each one of us have been graced with, what we always do, there's a deep understanding in this department. You learn something, you bring it back to share with somebody else. You don't learn it for you or learn it only for this department. You have to bring it back to a larger group of people, because you're never going to cover all the kids and all the service and all the needs. So we have to open the net. So I don't know if that really answered the question the way that you were thinking, but every time that something crosses our path, David, doesn't matter who it is, we are constantly, as a department, in communication with each other. I send things to people send things back to me, and then someone inevitably will reach out to whoever that person happens to be, the originator of it, and ask, would you come? Which is how John actually ended up being hooked to go to Batavia, when John was really believing that he was really close to New York City. I don't know if you remember that, John. He thought he was going close to New York City for his anniversary, but landed in Batavia, which was really quite a ways away, to go to the school for the blind. So
it was 8-hour drive or something.
Yeah, sure was. But I think it really is, it's at our end. We are thirsty for information, so we just reach out and ask. And if people don't want to share their information, then we try someplace else or a different way of getting it. But we definitely open the net and make it much wider than just the limited resources that we have. And that's how we were involved with UNC. Same thing.
And I know we're short on time, and I see like a common theme in a lot of these questions feels like, so like, what's the resource, right? What's the thing? What's the model? Like, are you all going in as like a giant group and teaching? And I think, at least from my perspective as the PRC social consultant and having the honor and privilege to work with this team, I don't want to say that you are all interchangeable, because you are all very unique, different people, but the culture of the department builds. And I think when this question about this kind of like, what do we call this? What is the model? The answer is that this holistic culture and approach gets dispersed. And so I think when you were asking, someone was asking, when, what do you meet these moments of resistance, right, where the teacher can't pause and stop? I think, that's definitely, I'm sure that happens more than some of us even see, but the shift is that there is this grace and acceptance and opportunity and this mindset of, yep, that's happening, let's talk about it. And then you have these kind of pillars in place to go back to and circle back and redirect and focus on this. And the way that you've developed this model allows people opportunities to grow and learn, instead of saying, okay, that's not working, it kind of goes back to, okay, we're going to come back and talk around and bring this back around and talk about it. And I think that that culture is kind of the thing that like can't be bottled and labeled quite yet.
Mm-hmm. If I could interject, because there are people asking some specific questions, and I'm remembering, and I'm just going to tell everybody in the webinar, we plan to talk for an hour, but if the host and the guests are all able to stay a little bit later, we'll try to get through the questions that are lingering. Could you go into detail about how the AT services and therapy services in general have changed over time? You mentioned in our previous conversation how you're writing them in the IEP and block services. Can you go into detail about that?
Absolutely. So for the AT services, we have not been a student-driven service for a very, very, very long time, probably 20 plus years. We provide levels of service. We're an indirect service that a district purchases our time. They purchase a body. So we are assigned by districts. And we go in and on an IEP, if a student has speech services that really are looking to provide access to AAC, that service is delivered across all school environments. So that allows the therapist as a direct provider to go in and co-teach with the teacher. It allows for that therapist to have more flexibility in how they deliver that service, which was a big shift for our components to really help them understand that we need to have flexibility because of the fact that kids need to communicate across all environments. So the direct providers shifted how they're writing that. So everyone has a clear understanding that even if you have individual services, you can pull aside, but you don't have to take into a room and only service as more of a clinical model. It really is immersed into a classroom. And therapists have the ability in their schedule to determine what works best for those kids. So some kids obviously still need really, truly quiet environments, explicit instruction, and then they can move them back into the classroom. But by writing it that your therapy room essentially is across all places in a school environment allows that therapist more flexibility. For us, we are there to support school personnel. So our services are not listed as a related service at all in an IEP. They are designed to support the staff. We believe very strongly that we're not the service providers. Staff know kids better than we will ever know students, and they should. They're with them every day. So our job is to go in and based on areas of need first, and that's a team need, really help build an environment that supports that, and then kind of keep building out, kind of up and out from that point so that we help people understand how to use that service across those places. How we do that is hours per year. And that's flexible enough that allows us to go in when we need, so we can put a lot of time in up front, sit back. It allows us to do video coaching. We ask staff to provide that service or to provide that support where we go in for the sole purpose of really looking later to say, what did we miss and how can we make that work better for kids? So we provide that in a really indirect manner. We also, under that big umbrella of time that a district buys, that allows us to go in and then help every staff member that's working with those kids understand how to use devices, but more importantly, how to communicate across all the environments with not only the kids who really are using the devices, but helping everybody else understand that if you're in a special education classroom, the likelihood of you being really proficient in all of the areas academically and in terms of communication is probably not, it's probably not at age grade level right at that point. So we go in and help staff understand how to look at kids in a manner that can provide technology support for all. By that, we bring in lots of low-end devices or lots of low-end visual supports and cues. We do lots of that short-term training with staff. We do anything that the staff, based on those conversations, need. So we have tons of flexibility to tailor a service based on where that person or that team is at, with the understanding that the next time we go back in, and the time after, we're growing. We don't want to be stale. We want to keep growing. So that's kind of how we walk in the door. The big umbrella, really, when we're the most successful, and, you know, I'm never going to lie, there's lots of places where we are always looking to grow and always looking to move people. But the greatest success comes when it comes way up above, when the true leader of those, the staff members, the administrator, has a level of understanding and buy-in as well. And so in the back end, in terms of our department, we work really hard with all of our administrative group, our directors of special education, to make sure that we have that down, and that they have an understanding of what we're looking for and what they're expected, and what kids what kids should get, what we feel they should get. So.
All right. I do have one more specific question that several people have asked. There are people, educators in school settings, who have kids with lots of different language systems that they're working with. Can you talk about that in your district?
Sure. So I know there's all sorts of buzz in our field about, you know, language system first, and why do we go one way or another? We are primarily a PRC area right now. We hadn't been for a really, really long time. And we aren't still a system first school. We always go in and we look at kids first, but we help people first before we get to putting any device in front of a student, really understand the difference in the language layouts and what the expectation is for language in general before we really kind of look at the tool first. In terms of the two ends of our spectrum, we're looking at two learner groups. So what we found is, although you can't exclude any other system, it's important to have the adults understand what you're doing with language in general. Take away the devices, take away the layouts, what you're doing to augment visual language in a classroom. And that comes first. So away from devices, what are you trying to accomplish? What is your finger doing when you are augmenting your instruction for kids who really are struggling with communication? How are you doing that first? And then we bring in the tools. And at this point in our area in time, we have lots of devices, lots and lots of LAMP, Words for Life. We have Unity devices still. We have sprinklings of all sorts of other language systems. But the reason that we've kind of kept moving further away from lots of different language systems is because it works, not because we're looking at a tool first or not. So how do we address the other tools? Same way that we address really building competency in Words for Life. We put the systems in front of the adults, and we really want the adults to learn the system away from the kids, and then go back in and help the instructor. And the instructor is the conductor. So the instructor is really kind of coached. How do you get your orchestra to work together? What is it that you're trying to accomplish, and what do you do? How do you cue them to find those words, and how do you really support the kids? So it is this kind of marriage between the operational end and then the teacher, and how the teacher is orchestrating language, not devices, not hardware. It's not about hardware. It's about language. Yeah. And I think that's how we manage it. So we do have many of our classrooms with older students in it that over the years have had different language systems, and we have 4 and 5, 6 different language systems in there, and we juggle it the same way we juggle one, which is language, I guess.
Well, I know that you all have all had a long day today, and I just have one more question. I don't know, John and Emily and David, if you want to think of any final questions, but I do have one last question for you, Leigh.
Sure.
I'm going to kind of lob this your way. I made this note based on something that you said. What is your unwavering belief about your job? You said something really wonderful about
I
who you
probably can't
are.
replicate it. I know I can't replicate it. So I don't know what I said.
Well, I wrote it down. I have it in
Okay.
quotes. If you
do.
don't remember it. You said we are here for kids and families. Our
yeah,
end goal has
sure.
always been the same. Can
Yeah,
you talk
that's
just
true.
Yeah.
Yep.
How does that?
That's true. We all believe, and that's probably, maybe that is our motto. We believe kids can, and we believe families deserve the right to be provided with education and supports that allow their kids to do whatever they can do and achieve. So that is, I think, our unwavering belief that everybody has the right to be provided with an opportunity to learn and grow and to contribute. And so if we walk in and we lead with that, and we help people understand that just because you're not seeing it doesn't mean it's not there. You have to look at it in a little different way. Then we can move forward, and we can provide all sorts of amazing things. And we can help a family recognize that it's not about fighting. It's about working together to build something that works at a home and at a grandparent's house and in a school. And so it's really about, it's about being partners, and going into partnership with a little human who's in the middle, who deserves a lot. That's it.
Well, I know I can speak for John and Emily and David, and when I tell you that it truly, I don't know that we could convey what is happening in your team and in your district in an hour. I really don't think we could convey that, but I know that each one of us has been deeply touched by what we've seen. And the thing is that this has not been an overnight success. This has been a decade plus of persistence and the foundational belief that you just described, and putting in those pillars of competency-based trainings, building in the flexibility of time to implement, and using your time so flexibly and beautifully with your team to bring those services in ways that really make a difference. So I thank you for your time. Are there any other final questions?
No, I just want to thank you again for the same belief you have in the kids you have in your staff, and they all rise up when they know somebody believes in them. So thank you for sharing what you did tonight. It was just perfect.
Could never do it without the group of people that are part of this department. Really couldn't. That's who makes it.
Yeah.
And actually all the service providers that work with the kids, that's really who makes it happen, not us. So.
And you would never say this about yourself. I know this, but you are a unique leader, and that you build up the people around you in a way that it's just standing back and watching you work from the sidelines, the little bit of time I got to spend with you, it's pretty unique to have a leader like yourself who is able to lead with your heart, to inspire people to do things differently and to see things for their potential and not for their limitations. And you just are tenacious in finding ways to bring the resources and the information to the people who need it. So it's just very inspiring. And that's what I hope everybody who watches this will get from tonight.
Thank you.
Well,
David, Emily, Stefanie, thank you all too. And Leigh, thank you guys.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks to everyone who logged on to tonight, or whatever time it is where you logged on. And I hope that you enjoyed being a part of this conversation. I appreciate you taking the time to be here with us. Thank you, Leigh. Thank you.
Yes,
everybody.
thank you. And I agree, David. Thank you for everyone who joined. Never in my wildest dreams.
Yeah, we should. That was a home run. We would have forgot to do that, David. Thank you all for being here.
Yeah. And
So
thank you
hopefully,
for your question.
yeah, hopefully we'll see you guys the next 2 nights.
Yeah, please come
Yeah.
back. And I will download the chat and I'll do a little randomizer pick and I'll find somebody to send that book to. So I've got your email address. Somebody's going to be a lucky winner. We'll hear from us.
All right. Thank you all. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.